I knew about it for a while, and after I went to Ukraine last summer, I knew that, I think God was calling me to Honduras, and so I was really excited to be able to go. And so my goal for this morning is really to be a time of thanks and a time of encouragement. Just to thank you all for all of your giving, your prayers, your love, but also just a time of encouragement and show you what kind of impact that you all had on the people of Honduras. Because I truly believe that it was you all, an extension of you, that made an impact in Honduras. And it was a lot of really cool stories from that. And so, the evening started we left on March 4th. We left from Blacksburg, and we all piled in the cars, drove up to Northern Virginia. We got there that evening, and we stayed at just a church up there. We had some nlcf alumni that we knew, and they let us crash in their church overnight. We had a little team meeting, and then we left the church the next morning at about 3 a.m. Our flight was out of Reagan at 6 a.m., so we had to be there at 4 a.m., and we were still about an hour out, so we left the church at 3 a.m. So it was an early morning for us getting started on our trip, and we were off on Big Bird. And it was a good thing we got there a couple hours early because we had some issues with getting our bags checked and the number of bags checked. But luckily we built in enough time that once we got to our gate, it was not too long before we took off. So as I said, you can kind of see the yellow star there. We Blacksburg, left up to DC, and then we flew on Big Bird down to Houston. We had a layover in Houston for a little while, and then from Houston, we flew then to Tegucigalpa, Honduras. Now, I was talking with a couple of you earlier about the flight in to Tegucigalpa as the capital. This, if you can see, it's very mountainous there. Mountains are okay. And the mountains there are a lot different than the mountains here. I was very much used to mountains covered with trees, either pine trees, deciduous trees, but these, it could be grass, it could be bare rock. So it's just a very much different climate. It was really cool to see. And then we finally landed safely, actually. And it was a funny thing about the airport in Tegucigalpa that pilots have to have special training in order to land there. It's one of the more dangerous airports to be able to land in because you have houses on one side, mountain on the other, and not a very long runway to land. Thankfully, they just extended the runway a little bit, and our plane, I think, they said it was the biggest plane that could safely land on the tarmac. I thought it was fine, they forewarned us, but then they're like, well, that was the best landing they've had in a while. But I thought it was fine. So we got out of the airport, luckily all our bags made it there safely. And then we started driving through Tegucigalpa, we were going to get some lunch. And there were a few sites, familiar sites. There was McDonald's. I saw a sign for Burger King, and there was even a Walmart. We were talking to some folks that were there, and actually this is very new, so it's a pretty big deal that they had a Walmart. I'm pretty sure it's the only one in Honduras, there in the capital. This is another site I saw along the way, and there was a lot of power lines like this that slightly concerned me. The electrical work there, but there was a lot of that. And then, after driving, we finally made it to our first authentic Honduran meal at Wendy's. And we just got off the plane, and then we've been up since 3 a.m., so really any food, we were just going with the flow at this point. So we got just a quick lunch there, and then we were back on the bus. This was the bus was owned by the church that we were working with. A lot of the church leaders and some of the translators, they came, met us at the airport just to greet us. A lot of people had been on the trip before, so there's some reuniting of good friends there. And then some of them were even on the bus with us, just already getting to know us, already getting ready. And we were headed on the bus to Donley. Donley was a town that we were in. It's a town where the church is at. Tegucigalpa was just the best airport that we could fly into. It was about a 2-hour trip from Tegucigalpa to Donley. If you can kind of see, that's all of Honduras. And then zooming in a little bit, that was the trek from Tegucigalpa to Donley. It was quite the road, going through the mountains on a school bus. And driving there, it's not too crazy, but one of the things I noticed is they use their horns for everything. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean something bad. They could be passing you, just get a little tune on the horn. They can be mad at you too. They can tooting the horn. Or you could be standing on the side of the road and they'll honk their horn at you as they drive by. They use their horn for everything. And leaving Tegucigalpa, this was just some of the houses. It seemed like they were barely clinging to the side of the hill. My major at school deals a lot with erosion and things like that. So looking at it, I was very concerned about how long some of those houses were going to stay where they were. You know, it was the edge of the house and then dropping off. But it was quite a lot of sights to be seen on the 2-hour drive from Tegus to Donley. There's a lot of mountains, beautiful scenery. This, you can't really tell in this picture, but it's actually a soccer field, or football as they like to call it. And this was in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there was not any kind of town anywhere near here, but there was a soccer field there. And that just shows that they really enjoy soccer. We actually went and played with some of them one night while we were there. And I just thought it was funny, in the middle of nowhere, there's just this nice grass soccer field right there on the way. This is actually, looks like some remnants of a forest fire. And I was like, what is this? And I was talking to some of the folks that have been there before, and they said that forest fires are actually pretty common there. That they have enough firefighting capacity to fight the fires like in the towns and the houses, but they just don't have the manpower or the time or the money to go out and fight these forest fires. And so usually they just let them burn. And that this year, that was actually one of the only ones I saw, but that there's usually a lot more of them. They just have to let them go so long as they don't affect any houses. This is Claro. You saw their signs a lot. I think that was their TV cable